Hi, I'm Cheryl Kagan, very proud to be the Senator for Gaithersburg and Rockville. Welcome to this week's edition of Kibbitzing with Kagan. My very special guest is my buddy and my colleague, Senator Malcolm Augustine, who is the new Senate President Pro Tem. Senator Augustine, welcome. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat today.
Thank you so much, Senator Kagan, and I must really acknowledge you as my vice chair, Kagan, of the standing committee that I sit on, our newly constituted committee, Education, Energy, and the Environment. Very excited to be working with you on it.
Thank you. Back at you. And I'm now calling it E-Quad, and I know that's not going to take, but education, energy, the environment, and elections, which are so.
That's right.
So folks, you're starting your second term in the Senate, and there are people who just don't know about your impressive background and dedication to community service. So let's talk about your history. First off, you were born in Louisiana and graduated from high school in Pittsford, New York.
Yes.
Went to Harvard and found your way down here. Why don't you talk about your family of origin and your journey?
Well, sure, I'd be happy to do that. I am very proudly a Louisianan. That's where I was born. That's where my family is from. My family did like so many other families. They came north for work and opportunity. Life is hard. Life was hard in Louisiana. My grandparents were dedicated to education, which is where my parents met. They met in college, working hard to just move to a better life, which is how we eventually landed in upstate New York in Pittsford. But we always went back there to Louisiana every year, never forgot who I was or where I was from. And I will tell you, Senator Kagan, it really feels great for me because District 47, where I represent in Prince George's County, feels an awful lot like there are portions of it that feel like different parts of where my family's from. Nice. Alexandria, Louisiana, and North Brentwood in Prince George's County are like the same place.
Okay, we're gonna get to your district and all that, but let's stick with how do you get from Pittsford to Harvard and then to Prince George's County to Maryland?
Sure, no, absolutely. So I get to those things through my wife. So my wife
my
wife went to the University of Virginia for her undergraduate degree, and that brought her to the Washington, D.C. metro area. She's worked inside of the area of science. She's a scientist who I'm very proud of. And so she's been in and around science in support of policy for the nation for her entire career. I followed her here. That's how I got here.
Good move. Good move. All right. You've had a long career in marketing and business and consumer relations. Why don't you give us a bit of an insight as to your leadership in the private sector?
Sure. So you're absolutely right. So I mentioned earlier that my family came north for work and opportunity. Part of that was my father, who has had a business. That business was in contract manufacturing, and that's where I worked. That's where I started doing sales and marketing work within that business, and have continued to do that now in a more independent way, but still helping direct manufacturers to market their wares specifically into institutional environments. This is just things that I've done along the way, and the good news for me is that it's a business where I'm in touch with consumers. It's very similar to the work that we actually do as far as communicating what we need to share. But I've also another significant lesson from that is the need to listen to what the needs and wants of my customers are. And so I've been able to bring that to this work too that we do.
Yeah, you're really good at that, actually.
Thank you.
So you have an amazing history in volunteer community service as well, and important stuff, not just randomly volunteering for stuff, but you were on the Prince George's County Democratic Central Committee. You were on the Metro Board, the Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority. You served on that board. You were the chair of the Cable Commission, which I think must be a thankless job, involved in Progressive Chevrolet, involved in your church. Talk about how you managed all that and how you think you made a difference through your volunteer service in all of those and probably some more
Sure.
organizations.
Yeah, it's interesting, Senator. It's been some time now, but one of my neighbors was
I
Rashawn.
know.
And
Okay, just to
so,
explain so Rashern and I came into the house together in class of 94 and we left together 8 years later. He is one of the most brilliant, dynamic, hardworking public leaders, public officials. He's run for governor a couple of times unsuccessfully, but served as county executive, and he's the best. And he's also in Cheverly. I'm sorry to interrupt. I just want to make sure everyone knows who that is.
absolutely. And he was the county executive at the time.
Yep.
And I saw him. We were already working hard on some local issues with our school, our local elementary school. We worked together on that through Progressive Cheverly. We were both founders of that organization. I was in our local CVS one day. I saw him down the hall, and I said, you know what? I'm ready to get involved in the local civic, activity. And so I just went up to Rashern and I said, hey, I'm ready to start working. He said, you are? Okay, great. I got lots of things for you to do. And so, that started really the opportunities to serve our county.
Yes.
And so he put me into places and positions to be able to help. I expressed a desire. I raised my hand. I was like, hey, I want to help. And so he said, listen, we got lots of places where you can help.
Yeah.
And so I've just tried to do that and dug in those ways.
Let's talk specifically about your leadership on the Metro board. For, I think it was 4 years.
Yep.
You served on that board. Metro is the backbone. It's the heart. It runs through your district. It runs through my district. What are you proudest of? What's working well at Metro? And what do you think are the biggest challenges it's facing today?
What you said, first of all, remains so critical to the state and also critical, obviously, to our region. Transportation, mobility, for me, is just so critical to what we all are going to be able to do moving forward. While at Metro, I was proud to also work actually on transit-oriented development. There is development that was pretty stagnant, particularly in Prince George's County. There are still, as you well know, we still have a lot of work to do in Montgomery County too, redeveloping around our red line. And some of those things are happening. But I will share with you one of the things that I think is, which you wouldn't know, but was a real contribution that I made. The Metro required for redevelopment, a 1-for-1 replacement on parking, which in and of itself was problematic as we're trying to move away, as you well know, but that was what they were trying to do. And not only did they do that, Senator, they also required that the parking lot that would be required, structured parking lot, would have a 50-year life, which is not the industry standard. So what did that do? It made all the projects not feasible financially. And so
what is the industry standard?
30 years. It's
30. Okay. Correct. So unrealistically long then.
Exactly.
Okay.
The reason that they did that is because if you build it that way, your operating costs are less, because the maintenance costs are fewer because of the structure. So they had their reasons for doing that. But they were just doing it because that's the way that they did it. Because they said, "Oh no, that's how we do it." And they didn't have a policy. I said, "Well, what's the policy?" And come to find out, there was no policy.
Interesting.
It was simply a practice.
Yeah.
So I said, "Okay, well, we need to change that, because that's not you're making it such that this transit-oriented development cannot occur." We did do that. We changed it, and it really opened up transit-oriented development in Prince George's County, and also helped to spur opportunities across the entire region.
That's great.
In a way that you really don't know, but I was very proud of that as a shift.
So just to explain a little, transit-oriented development, and you can say it better than that, but it's basically smart growth. It's builds near where transit is.
That's exactly right. So the idea is that thankfully we have this mass transit network that we
Mhm.
have. And in particular, where we have this mass transit network, those places where they cross, and so they end up being places that a lot of people come to, that are a lot of opportunity. But we want to have our development centered around those places,
Yes.
because those are places that are accessible by the largest number
Yep.
of our people.
Yep.
And so we want to concentrate effort on that, so that we're able to, it's also just best for the environment. This way,
Yep.
if we can do that, we keep people out of cars, we're able to get more mass transportation. And so that's the essence of transit-oriented development.
Love it.
And we
One
want to
more
make,
question. Oh.
yeah, go ahead.
One more question on Metro before we move on, because we've got a whole lot more to cover. The Silver Line in Virginia just extended to Dulles. Do you envision Fantasyland with your magic wand? Should it expand in Maryland, and if so, where?
There are, yes, and
Priorities.
there have been on the books. There are on the books right now, and there's always been discussion. There's been a few different discussions I'll share with you. So one for certain is an extension across the Woodrow Wilson Bridge that would connect southern Prince George's County to Virginia, an extension of what would be the Blue Line, that would bring National Harbor into the fold.
Totally.
And then also could then connect with also the Green Line, which is a little further into Prince George's County. There has also always been on the books an extension, although it's not Metro, an extension of the Purple Line for it to keep going, basically, so that we were able to even create a better connectivity for our trains. And so that one is also in the books. And so those are for certain there. In Montgomery County, there's a greater desire to improve the MARC system.
Yes.
Which is the commuter rail, and make it more robust, have it go longer to make
and more frequent.
Exactly. Yeah. To make the red line even more impactful. Right. And so that's kind of where we would go with that.
So we've got to shift to you being a senator.
Okay. Happy to do it.
So what made you run for office? What really inspired you?
I ran for office because I looked around my neighborhood and I felt like there was so much potential that was just unrealized. That the people who were already in office, I mean, they were just kind of, I mean, there's no disrespect, but I just didn't feel like we really had that really strong voice, that really strong advocate that was there. And so instead of sitting on the sideline, I raised my hand to run, to ask to do it. I mean, to be a part of it.
That's awesome. You're a good hand raiser. I love, thank goodness that you do that. So what is your proudest accomplishment from your first 4 years, your first term in the Senate?
It's really tough to answer that. I'm just really I'm just really pleased with the work that I was able to do. But if I had to point to one piece from a legislative standpoint, it would likely be the work that I did on dental coverage for adults. It was last year, it was Senate Bill 150. And this piece of legislation basically for Medicaid, which covers approximately close to 1 million Marylanders, the adults, they did not have dental coverage. They did not have preventive dental coverage. Yeah. We were one of the very few states that just didn't have that. And I worked very hard last year with Chair Gazzoni, who is the chair of our budget and taxation committee, to basically to rectify that. Nice. And to provide dental coverage to nearly 1 million Marylanders, which started in January. So it just started a couple of weeks ago, where they have this benefit where they
How are they going to find out about it?
Well, it's been communicated to them through their providers, through Medicaid for certain. And believe me, the number of people who have reached out to me, they're getting the word. Okay?
I love that. That's amazing. That's amazing.
And so, and it was a tremendous commitment. I mean, it's a commitment of tens of millions of dollars each year as well to Marylanders. And so, Senator, if I had to point to one that had like this really unbelievable impact.
Yeah.
I worked hard on behavioral health, but that one too is just, it's pretty significant.
That's amazing. Congratulations. I don't think that was as high on my radar screen as it should have been.
Well, I was also part of the reason why I brought it up, because I figured it wouldn't be. So
No,
I wanted to talk
absolutely.
about that one. Yeah.
So, like we have to talk about 988 because you have talked about mental health, behavioral health, for all Marylanders, also in the African American community, the Black community, where there has been some stigma that we must address. You and I have talked about the importance of people knowing about 988, which
Yes.
is a crisis and suicide hotline that it went live last July and is available everywhere nationally. Make sure you know about it. If you don't know about it, spread the word. Why don't you talk about 988 in Maryland, or the importance of it, if you will?
Absolutely. So with your help and with the help of the other senators last year, we created a 988 trust fund that was organized to help to financially support, to make sure we had dedicated money to support 988. 988 is the very easy to remember 3-digit number that you can call if you or a loved one, or if you observe someone who is in a behavioral health crisis. And it goes to a call center, of which we have 8 in the state of Maryland, a call center where the people who answer have experience in helping people to de-escalate people who are in a crisis, and also are able to get people to the resources that they need when they are in a behavioral health crisis. But even more than that, it's also, we're working hard to make it a resource for the family members when they have a person who has long-term needs that are in the mental health, mental illness, substance use and substance abuse areas. Senator, we had a hearing yesterday in Budget and Tax to support basically the funding for the next year, which we have within that budget is money for the actual operation, but also some additional money for administration, to include advertising and promotion, and so we can get this word out. There's also, just so that you know, there's a federal $10 million that has come from SAMHSA, which is the Substance and Mental Health Services for the United States Department of Health and Human Services, because I know we're not supposed to use.
I know, right? Those acronyms, that's a hard acronym.
It's a really tough acronym. But they do have money for us to make sure that we promote 988. We're going to work very hard to do it.
So you heard me just tell this story of speaking at a high school in my district and asking, I had over 100 students in the auditorium, and asked how many of them. I was talking about my work on 911, and then I pivoted. I said, by the way, like, things have been hard through the pandemic for a lot of you and for a lot of us. And I said, how many of you know about 988, know what that is? And I told you, one person raised her hand, and it was a teacher. Not one student knew about 988. So we've got to roll that out. So good for you. Thank you for your leadership. It's just critically important. Let's move on. So you served your first 4 years on the Finance Committee, and now you're on the new committee. What are you most looking forward to in the E-Quad, or but education, energy? I have still the environment, elections, yes, ethics, like all of the stuff that we do. Is there anything in particular that you're psyched to work on?
I am. So first of all, I will say I'm like a policy nerd. So I love the fact that I just get the opportunity to dig in and to understand some new policy areas that are just so critical to Marylanders. What I think is just so interesting is that for example, if you look at like the titles of what we have, education, and you're going to hear this from our governor, Governor Moore, education, so central to how we move forward. Still a lot of work to be done. We heard yesterday, myself and you, from the superintendent of the schools, and there's still work to be done within that for us to move that space forward.
No question.
The climate crisis is in our committee. That's if you define it in the way that's a little more clearly, we say it's energy and environment, but it really comes together in how are we going to deal with the climate crisis?
No
And
question.
so that too, if you think about the fact that we have these two just absolutely critical elements to be working on in this coming term, I'm very excited to be doing that.
That's awesome. And I just want to take a moment to give a shout out to former Prince George's Senator, my former chair, Paul Pinsky, who was just a nationally known and respected leader on climate solutions. And he has left the Senate, but he is now the head of the Maryland Energy Administration for the Moore-Miller administration, which is just really exciting. Let's talk about your new leadership position. President Ferguson just named you President Pro Tem, which is
right. Well, the good news is, Senator, he recommended me, but you voted for me.
Well,
so
that's true. With enthusiasm.
Yeah,
with
yes.
enthusiasm. So
I'm grateful for that.
So why don't you talk about what that job is? People have never heard of it, or maybe they've heard of it, but they don't know what that means. Is it extra work for you? Is it, what extra skills? And why don't you talk about that?
Sure, I'd be happy to do so. So first, let's just deal with like the sort of like the technical.
Yeah.
And the technical thing is that we have two elected officers of our Maryland State Senate.
Mm-hmm.
And the two elected officers are the presiding officer, the person who runs the show on a day-to-day basis. That's our president of our Senate. That's President Bill Ferguson, who we also elect every session, every term, not even term, I'm sorry, every session we elect a new presiding officer, someone who is responsible for managing the work of the Senate.
Mm-hmm.
We have a second position, which is the temporary presiding officer. And that is the position that you all elected me to be. What that is that if the president or the presiding officer is not there, the work of the Senate is to continue. Then I would take the responsibility to preside over those proceedings. Up to a certain period of time.
Yep.
After that, we have to elect a new presiding officer. But for those temporary times, therefore, President Pro Tempore,
yes,
right? Those times, then I would take on the responsibility of presiding in those instances.
So have you gotten experience, extra training of getting up on the dais and gaveling and all that? Have you started that yet?
We have done some of that. There's still more to go on that, because that part of it is there. But then there's the other part of it, Senator, which is to be a part of leadership and to be there and to be helpful.
Yes.
And to be a part of those conversations, which President Ferguson, threw me into the deep end on that already.
I love that. But that's perfect for a policy wonk like you.
Yeah, so exactly right. So I've already, there have been those instances where it is an opportunity where if President Ferguson is in one location, can't be in two places at once.
Yeah.
I'm there to be able to share, to listen, as you well know, but also to share the position of the Senate, so that we can keep more conversations going. He's very inclusive. He's helping to get more folks involved. So I've been grateful for that. And then we come back and we're able to keep, to extend the reach of what we're doing. And so that Senator, I didn't know that, but that happens, and it happens every day. I mean, it's actually really pretty busy, that part of it.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for taking it on, and you're the perfect person. So we're lucky to have you. We're starting to run long, and I still have a lot of questions for you. Briefly, since you're my first Kibbitz guest, since we now have Governor Westmore and Lieutenant Governor Aruna Miller, what's your highest hope for the Moore-Miller administration?
The highest hope is that we're able to maintain the positive trajectory that they've already begun of leave no one behind. And that we maintain that we don't get knocked off of that, because it does get difficult to do. If we do that, I mean, the sky's just the limit. If they do that, if we're able to help them to do that, the sky's the limit.
Agreed. I don't know if you happen to see, but the highway signs are up, and they even have not just Governor Westmore, but they have leave no one behind on the highway.
My children saw it on the inauguration day, that they were already up, and they showed me. Absolutely.
So cool. So cool. I love that. Brag about your family. You have two daughters as well. You've already talked about Lauren. Anything you want to add, and about work-life balance, because especially with your new responsibilities, how do you manage it all and make sure that you've got time for them?
It's very challenging, for sure. I'm very proud of my kids. I've got a freshman in college at Harvard. She's doing awesome. I'm very proud of her. And I've got a junior in high school who is also just doing really great kids. Very, very, they would say very well grounded. I feel that way too about them. And just extremely talented too. The sky's the limit for them, which I have always wanted for them.
Nice.
I've always wanted that for them. It's one of the things that I love about Maryland. And the thing that I really love about Maryland is that my kids are not different. They're not this, they're just kids. Where I grew up in upstate New York, Senator, I was different. I was a Black kid, who was different than other folks because I was smart, whatever, but you weren't like the other kids. Here, we don't have that, Senator. I love Maryland for those reasons. We all can just be who we are authentically. And I mean for everybody.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And work-life balance, anything you want to say about how you make time for family in the midst of everything else?
The work-life, I mean, it is a challenge. It's just deliberate. It's just stop. It's just have dinner together, which we did with the girls last night. My wife has a very busy, she's out of town. She's for her job right now, but we stop. We eat dinner together. We talk, and just to be deliberate about it and to be there. I mean, one of my greatest accomplishments and greatest joys was coaching my girls in basketball when they were growing up. And I just, those are some of the most precious times of my life.
Of course, of course. So I have one more question that occurred to me just right before we were going on air here. And I hope this isn't awkward. So I don't know quite how I'm going to navigate, but you're very active in St. Ambrose Church, and you were on the pastoral council and stuff. And sometimes Black churches on social issues can be more conservative. And I wonder, we are now facing the anniversary of the Roe v. Wade decision for the first time in its 50-year history, when it has been overturned, whether it has been marriage equality, respect for our lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgendered friends and neighbors, whether it's right to die, compassionate choice, aid in dying, all those different ways of talking about that. How do you navigate, just if you want to share any thoughts, your personal faith engagement in your faith community with being a policymaker, where there may be some distinctions?
Yeah, I don't find there to really be a distinction, in that my life as a leader is, I find that to be my responsibility to lead for all of the folks who we represent, and that instance, actually everyone in the state of Maryland. And so to me, that is going to be central to my decision making. I'm going to try to do that as well, Senator, being thoughtful about where the data leads me and where the facts lead me in all things. When I go to church, and seek forgiveness for when I do things that I shouldn't do, as we all do, and to understand that there's much that's bigger than me, and that I need to maintain my humility within that. And that the first and foremost is to love, and to love others. And that is what's at the core of the things that I do. And so I don't find there to be a conflict in that. Are there times when things are in disagreement? Because I'm looking at the information, looking at the data for the whole of the 6 million. Yes, that is the case. But I readily feel very comfortable with the decisions I make along those lines.
Good for you. Good for you. Thank you. All right. Well, it is time, President Pro Tem, Senator Augustine, for the Fast Five. 5 quick questions with 5 quick answers. Question number 1, what is your favorite metro station?
Cheverly.
Okay, that makes sense.
Where I live.
There you go. Question 2, who is your favorite author? And recommend a book that she or he has written that you've loved.
That is interesting. So I would have to probably say Zora Neale Hurston. I would struggle to give you one of her books but I think that for me, she shared, I feel like, again, as I shared earlier, like it's an indicator of who I am and some of the things that she has written. So
nice.
It's encourage people to look into Zora Neale Hurston.
Definitely. Question 3, what is your favorite family tradition?
The favorite family tradition is playing basketball in our driveway, particularly against other neighborhood kids, watch my girls beat the boys, it's a lot of fun. A lot of fun.
Love that. Question 4, what is your sort of favorite self-care? When you are exhausted, stressed, what do you do to take care of yourself?
Well, it's interesting. That's an interesting question. I really, it's interesting, Senator. I find a lot of actual joy in being with the community. I mean, I know it sounds kind of weird and everything, but my kids and I were having this conversation just like last night about introverts versus extroverts, which I don't consider myself to be too much of an extrovert, but I do get energized when I'm out talking to my community members and spending time with them, particularly. I just feel like so many of them are like, they remind me of my family.
Nice.
So it just kind of energizes me. It always helps me too when things aren't going quite right. They help me to get it on.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Question number 5, President Pro Tem, Senator Malcolm Augustine, what is your hidden secret superpower? What is a skill or talent that you have, something you're really good at that most folks can't do?
Well, I wouldn't say it's a skill that most folks can't do, but I do think that a skill or talent that I have is staying in touch with people and listening to them, hearing what they have to say, because a lot of times, folks they don't feel heard. And I think that is sort of a kind of across the board. And it's one that people can do, but many people don't actually do it. So
you are right. And I am too often guilty of that. Too quick to want to say the next thing and not fully pausing and taking in what someone just said. Or so it's something I work on. But Senator Augustine, Malcolm, what a pleasure to chat with you today. Thank you so much for taking the time. And I am so psyched to continue to serve with you, not just in the full Senate, but also now on committee. Stay well. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Senator. It's been a wonderful time getting an opportunity to talk to you today, and I'll see you soon.
Sounds great. Take care.
Thank you.